I think like everybody should do student missions. Every time someone asks me about it, I'm like 100% you should go, because you know, sometimes we don't feel like we're really qualified to go somewhere, but God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ignite, where we talk about hot topics from around our campus. I'm your host, Matthew Taylor, and today I'm hosting with a very special guest host, Anna Lewis.
Hi guys, like you said, my name is Anna, and I'm a current sophomore nursing major here at Southern. So I'm excited to be here and joining the Ignite team for today.
This episode, we will be talking with two students about their experiences abroad in the mission field.
We're super excited to hear what they have to say, so let's get right into the interview. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming here on this show with us today. As we begin, do you guys want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. My name is Zach. I am a senior finance major here, and I'm graduating in May, so I'm kind of excited about
Oh,
that.
exciting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm Michaela, and I'm a junior biology major here.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. So you guys both recently went into the mission field. So I want to talk about that, the process to go abroad. What led to that decision?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's process when they're about to go abroad, like, it is so much, like, backstory to it. There's so much that consists of just that decision of, oh, I'm going to go be a student missionary. Like, before they even, like, have that thought, like, how God is working on their lives, like, way before. For high school, I went on a lot of mission trips. I went on a mission trip my freshman year, and then my junior year was a big international one.
Where did you guys go?
We went to Peru.
Exciting.
Iquitos, Peru. It was pretty fun, and it kind of got me like a little flavor of like what mission work can be like.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it so much, and I worked with kids when I was there, and that was like so fun for me. So came back to Southern, and then my freshman year, I heard about it at Vespers, and they made a call, and they were like, if you want to be a student missionary, like, you know, if you hear God calling you, and I was like, you know, I'm actually kind of hearing God calling me right now, and I was like ignoring it. I was like, no, wait, I'm not. And then I was like, yeah, no, I am. And so I went up, and that just kind of began my journey. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you went to Bolivia.
Went to Bolivia, so like right underneath Peru, and that kind of was a whole decision of where I was going to go, but ultimately the idea of kids and learning another language was a really cool factor. Yeah.
How about you?
So for me, it definitely started a while back. So actually, I grew up overseas with my parents because they were both missionaries. So I always knew I wanted to do something like that in the future. And so when I got to Southern, I heard about the student missions program, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to do something like that. I just didn't know when I was going to go. But second semester of my sophomore year, I had been kind of praying about it and seeing like whether junior year was going to be a good time for me to go.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure, so I was just kind of like thinking about it. But I remember like telling a couple people, because they say like as biology majors, it's not the best year to go that year. But I remember like praying and thinking about it, and that the next morning, like my devotional was like from Genesis, when God tells Abraham to leave his country and go, and then the service, like it was Sabbath, and the service that day was also about serving and going out of your country. So I was like, okay, God, I'll definitely do that then. So yeah, that's how it began.
That's so cool. So it's so nice to hear like kind of like your origin stories of how you guys kind of got into the mission field. Do you guys have anything super memorable, or maybe even some stories that you guys can recall from your time there?
Oof. I definitely have so many stories like that come to mind when like thinking about being a missionary, or like what that was like. I think the first like memorable moment was when I finally arrived at Familia Feliz, and like what that felt like to get there. After so much travel, because in Bolivia, the way to get to Ruinabaque is through Death Road, and it's like, so it's called Death Road, and it's not, it's like real. It's actually like people actually die on that road because it's like right in the Andes Mountains, and you just like, it's dirt, and people can literally just like go off like very, very easily. So that was super stressful, and just flying international, like by myself without my parents, like all this stuff is just really like a lot. And then I finally get to Familia Feliz, and I remember I got there and just I see a whole like herd of kids running at me. You know, just like 15 kids, and they're just running at me, and they're just like hugging me, and they're introducing themselves, and I'm just like, wow, like this is why I'm here. So like that first moment, and then contrasting it with my last moment at Familia Feliz was super hard, because those same kids that were running at me, now like I'm leaving, and it was like so hard, because like I remember being in the bus, and then just like they're just going away, and just like waving at them, and just them staying there, and that idea of like going and helping and like giving your everything and your all and being with them for the whole year, and like, and in my case, like raising them for a year and then leaving them was like, whoa, like that was super difficult to deal with. But like those highs and lows that come with the student missionary year, like it kind of comes with it, but it was a really good year, like overall.
Wow. How about you, Michaela?
For me, one of the most meaningful experiences was definitely, so we had gotten to know like some of the community. I was in Tanzania for the first semester of my year.
Right.
And so we had gotten to know some of the community, the kids in the community and stuff. We were doing like medical work, but also just like doing other stuff in the community. So we had become friends with like a bunch of the people there, and we would go like every evening to play soccer with them.
Oh, fun.
And
yeah.
it was so fun. And I remember being like becoming really good friends with one of the kids. He was like 13, 14. And every day he would like bring us sugar cane and stuff. And he was just like the cutest kid. And I decided to start a VBS like partway through there. I was like, you know, I should do something for like the kids in the community here. So I was teaching them like the fundamental beliefs of the church, but like for kids, like easy like songs for them to remember and stuff like that.
You wrote them?
No, it was actually like a program that my mom started, but it was through like, yeah. So
But
it was,
you started like the whole VBS program.
yeah, I started it there.
Yeah.
So I would teach them the songs every day. We'd like go meet at the church, and like all the kids from the community would come, and I would like teach them the songs, and it was really fun time. And it lasted like over 2 weeks, I think, because it's such a big program, you know?
Yeah.
But it was really cool, because at the end I was like, you know, like now that you guys know all the beliefs, you know, you could get baptized. So is there anyone here that like would want to get baptized? And that kid raised his hand, and he ended up being the one to get baptized. And I thought that was just so meaningful, because it was like, if at least one person's life can be changed, I feel like there was a purpose for me being there.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, cool. Michaela, you mentioned that both of your parents were missionaries, and you spent some of your life living abroad, and you also had your mission year. How would you say living abroad and living here in the States, the major difference in atmospheres would be?
Oh, it's so different. It's actually crazy. I spent most of my life abroad. It was like 8 years.
Wow.
So from when I was 2 years old to when I was like 11, I was like outside of America, and we would come back like every year for 2 months, because that's how like they usually do it with mission work. But it was just always so different, because just the pace of life, like living overseas, is just so much slower and more relaxed, and you know, like you're just outside playing with your friends. Like it's just such a nice like time, and you can also see like the need that people have for God, and the way that like everyone relies on God while they're overseas, you know? So definitely coming back and seeing like, I don't know, everyone had like technology, and it just seemed like everyone like was so much more like better off here, and people's needs for God was like much different, you know, than I had seen in the mission field.
Like
where
the dependence wasn't on God anymore.
Yeah, it was like much more on like themselves. So just seeing that, and then also feeling that like I felt like I was one of the kids there, like while I lived there, because I just related so much more to them than I would to like American kids when I would come back. But I knew that they would never see me as like the same as them, and then American kids wouldn't either, because I didn't live there either. So it was just a weird like thing to be able to go through, because you just don't feel like you ever
both
relate.
worlds.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounded like such an interesting dynamic between, you know, like living overseas and just coming back to the States. It must have been a really hard experience for sure, but I'm sure you must have also learned more about like the culture, and as well as, you know, trying to integrate between like two different worlds.
For sure. Yeah.
So Zach, you went to Bolivia with some students from Southern.
Yeah.
Were these a lot of friends or people you got to know during your experience?
Yeah, so I actually went to Bolivia with, there was 3 of us and then me, so there was 4 of us, like the first kind of initial group that went in August. I knew one of them pretty well, and then the other two I kind of like knew a little bit at Southern, met them at like retreats or maybe like SM class, but like not really. And it's crazy, like when you're in an airport together, like in Lima, for example, and you're like, we're gonna be best friends, you know, kind of feel. And going with people was, and like taking that group and that community, like, and allowing them to be a part of your like SM year and opening up to them and just having that like community with you all year long was so important. Like just for like one, like my sanity sometimes, like for having people that are like American that get you and that you get them. Also just like for me, like having people just to speak English to, like just like that idea of like this is a little bit of home away from home.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned, I know you touched on a couple of the challenges that you faced when you went overseas. Was there anything else that kind of stuck out to you as, you know, like a major challenge, maybe not only for you, but for other people who go abroad?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for me was just that cultural like differences slash language difference. So that was a really big barrier and challenge that I had to overcome because speak English, you know, I grew up here, and then going to Bolivia, it's Spanish, and like, you know how some countries it's like, oh, Spanish / English, or like this / English, like, nope. Like Spanish, like that was it, you know, like that was the language, especially like where we were in Bolivia. It's like Runabaque, which is like right in like the jungle basically, and so like there is really none of that outside kind of like influence, cultural outside, like it's really special to that area. So yeah, huge challenge was that. And I think for myself, something I wish that like people told me, or that like I could hopefully tell someone if you're going somewhere like that, is like don't let it distract you from your goal. Like don't let these challenges think like, oh, like I just can't like overcome them, therefore I'm a bad SM, or therefore like I'm not doing what I think I should be doing.
Michaela, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely for me, it was really hard coming to Tanzania. I expected to like go there and start working as like a medical assistant in the hospital right away and doing all this stuff in the community. But it at first, like we didn't have our work permits, and it was a process to get them. So for the first like couple weeks, we really were limited on what we could do. We couldn't even like go into the hospital to see different things happening. We were just doing random jobs here and there, teaching people like English or, you know, helping out with other things. And it just wasn't what I envisioned myself to be doing. And I felt like, do I really have a purpose here? Like, I felt like I saw all these other SMs like doing all this other stuff. Like they just seemed so useful. And I was like, what am I, like, did I really come to the right place? Like I was really questioning God about that. And after that long waiting period, I was like, you know, like I'm just gonna trust that God has a plan for me and that He knew, like He sent me here for a reason, you know? And I remember like I prayed about it and I said, like, I'm going to pray for a month about this, a month from when I like first arrived. And I remember the exact day that it was a month from when is when we finally got our work permits and we were allowed to like work in the hospital. And I was like, wow, like really in those waiting periods is when you trust in God the most and you find that relationship with God growing. So I think I definitely grew the most during that time. Even though it was a challenge, it was also like the most growth and like the best, one of the best parts of my mission year.
Wow. And I know we've touched a little bit on it right there, you're saying, but is there anything else of the most rewarding experiences that you guys have had going abroad, something that just encompassed why you did it, why you went abroad, and why God had you there?
Yeah, I think that is something that I kind of thought about a lot, like, and I think a lot of SMs might think about this, like, what is my, like, it reason? Like, what, like, why am I here? Like, the exact detail. I knew for sure, like for a fact, that I was called to be a student missionary, and I was called to Bolivia. I was called to be with those kids. But like the why question kept coming up. Like, why am I here? Like, why did you call me? Like, I don't get it. Like, like why me to this moment right here in this time? And I think looking back on it, the reason is because these kids needed a support and they needed someone just to be there for them. There's so many stories that I have that are like, it's just so sad that like these kids come from broken families, or they just come from families that are like don't want them, or they like are abusing them, or they are neglecting them, or they financially can't support them, and the kids are on like 1 cup of rice a day. It's just like stuff like this that is so sad. And why me to these kids? Like why? And I think the reason is because you said yes, you know, like because you said like you want to be student missionary, and like I'm plugging you in where there's a need. Like, was I the perfect person to go to Bolivia? Probably not. With all the challenges I had, like was I the exact perfect person? Like on paper, no. But like was I? Yes, because of like God was qualifying everything that I was able to do. It's crazy to see and look back, like the things and the kids that were there. There were some kids that were just there when I was there, and looking back on it, and it's like, why did God put me in their life just for that like specific time period? And so like there's just examples and stories after stories of like just like me being there was enough.
It's like Moses. Yeah.
That's amazing. I 100% agree with what you're saying. Definitely like the times when I felt like the most like God brought me here for a reason was there was a disabled school close by like our compound, and we would go there like every afternoon. It wasn't Adventist, but it was like a government run school, and there was like all these like disabled orphan kids that would live there, and they just had very little help ever. So like every afternoon a couple of us SMs would go and just help like clean their dorms, you know, that were just so dirty, or help bathe them, or help them, you know, to eat, or different things like that, because they were just so disabled. And there was so many times when I was like the only person there. There was like the house parent wasn't there, nobody was there, and it was like if I hadn't been there, nobody would have been there for them. So it just like I was like, wow, you know, like even if we can't like communicate completely because they're disabled, you know, a lot of things they don't even know like what we're saying, but I feel like just our presence would make them so happy. And sometimes we don't know like why exactly we're placed there, but I think like in heaven for sure we'll see like the results of like the work that we did there, even if it felt like what were we really doing, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know that there are a lot of students here at Southern that always go back and forth on whether they are meant to take that step. So I want to ask you guys is why should that student who's questioning going abroad for student missions, why should they take that step?
Yeah, that question is, it's ultimately between like them and God, obviously. However, if I was to make the decision for you, like I would say go do it, like go serve, go be a student missionary, because it has transformed my life in so many ways, spiritually, like just culturally, and being more aware of like people and different areas that grew up differently than me, or languages, and just like all these things. Like you become such a more rounded person. That's what you can receive. However, the big part of it is that because you don't know what God can do through you, and like when you say yes to going out and serving, and if you say yes to it, like you're saying yes to like, God, I'm willing to just go and jump into whatever you have out there for me, and like you're gonna get me through it, and like I'm gonna be a vessel right now for you.
Wow. Michaela, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I think like everybody should do student missions. Every time someone asks me about it, I'm like 100% you should go, because you know sometimes we don't feel like we're really qualified to go somewhere, but God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And so if you feel called to go somewhere, it's not like a coincidence. God definitely calls everyone for a reason, and even if you don't feel like I don't think I can do that, like that's too hard, like God will help you to like trust in Him so much, and to like grow that relationship with Him so much that like you will be able to be qualified to do anything He calls you to do. So I just think like it's just so worth it. It's so rewarding. It opens up your perspective on like your entire life, and it just has lasting results. Like because of that, I definitely want to be a missionary in my future, like after, you know, finishing like my degree and everything. Like service is like a huge part of my life that I wish everyone could have a chance to experience.
there's like a saying that's like every major has a mission, right? Like everyone is called to do something. And I didn't really fully wrap my brain around that until I went out there to Bolivia. And there were things that we couldn't do, or things that we wanted to do, we couldn't because we were lacking this person, or we might be lacking this resource. Like the effect that we could have like as a student missionary body, or missionaries in general, when everyone is involved, is just insane. Because I think so many people get the idea that like, oh, if you're preaching, you're being a missionary. And that was kind of my idea too. Like if I'm on the pulpit and I'm up there like preaching, that's when I'm doing my mission work. However, that was like maybe 5% of my student mission year. Like it's doing the work of like the normal day. That's when you're doing your mission work. Yeah. And like every single major, every single person, every single idea, like if it's coming from God, it can be used in the mission field. We had a film major come with us, and she transformed the way that we could do our advertising. I was able to bring finance and business skills, and people were able to bring nursing skills. Like we couldn't just do that by ourselves. Like if we just thought like, oh, I'm gonna go and do one aspect, like everyone came together to provide the care that was needed. When every major and every person and like everyone is called to go, because everyone like has an area that they can bring to the mission field. The mission field is way more than just what you might think it is, like a pulpit. It's everything around that.
It completely transforms like your view of like what service is, because at the beginning you're like, oh, I'm gonna be doing this while I'm overseas, and it's like this certain thing that you just expect yourself to like be perfect at, but really like when you go there you just see that like service is an everyday part of life. It's just loving the people that you're around. And so the way that you see that while you're there, it completely transforms like coming back here and being like, you know what, service, I don't have to be overseas to do it. You know, it goes into every part of your life. You can do it here, you can do it anywhere. You know, it's just like building those relationships with people and continuing to love those people every day, doing those small things that like you don't feel like make a difference, but they definitely do.
Absolutely.
Right. So as students right now, or maybe as they're thinking upon it, thinking about going into the mission field, do you guys have any sort of advice to what, you know, they can be preparing themselves for, like how they can do that?
Flexible. Prepare to be flexible, because that is what it's all about. Like imagine like you're a student missionary, you're giving a whole year of your life, you go to a location, and then they ask you to do something, and you're like, actually, I don't want to do that. Or like, actually, that's not what you actually didn't tell me I was gonna do that, so I'm not gonna do that. Like the point is that you're there to serve, and service is everything and anything. And so like, prepare to be flexible, and maybe if you gotta put yourself through some flexibility trainings right now, like hopping on and doing extra stuff, but like that idea and mindset can really make or break the year of, well, I'm here to do this one thing and that's all I'm doing, or I'm here to serve and to help in whatever aspect it is. Those are the people that are going to get way more out of it, because God might not have actually wanted you to do that thing. Like maybe he needed you to go through this other thing, and your willingness to say yes and be flexible can open up so much.
Definitely same with flexibility. Being flexible not only in what you're gonna do, but in like what will happen during the day, because there's never a set schedule. Like you're never gonna have like a certain thing. You know, there would just be things thrown on us like every day, like, oh, actually, this is what you're gonna do, and you know, just never have like expectations that are very rigid, like how we have in America. Like at 4 p.m. we're gonna be doing this, because that's never gonna happen in the mission field. There's just things always come up, and it's just always like you're gonna have like chaos. It's gonna be hectic, but with God there, that's like all that matters, you know? As long as you can continue to rely on God and know that your relationship is gonna get so much stronger with him, that's all that matters, you know?
Wow. God works through the chaos,
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So, man, I really appreciate you guys coming on to talk today. Before we close up, I want to ask if there's any last thoughts or quick summarization about your guys' thoughts on mission work.
I guess real quick, like just if you're thinking about it and you're wrestling with it, just do it. Like just full send, go and do it, because there is so much waiting for you that you don't even know is there.
Michaela?
Yeah, if God is even pulling on your heart even a little bit to go, go, because you will never, ever regret that year of your life.
No.
Well said.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for just giving up a little bit of your time to come share your experiences here with us. You know, it's very valuable to us, and even for everybody who's watching here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode. And thank you, Anna, for joining us as a special guest host today.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and it was so cool to hear about Zack and Michaela's experiences out in the mission field. Honestly, I definitely hope that someone who hears these stories decides to take their next step and to go serve as well.
Ignite is a student-run production based in the School of Journalism and Communication. Thank you all for joining us today. Follow us on Instagram at IgniteSAU and subscribe here on YouTube at the School of Journalism and Communication. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.